Some people believe in ghosts, some don't. But here's the thing, it doesn't even matter if you believe or not, because the second you hear something about them, something in you gets scared anyway. And look, over 45% of people worldwide actually believe in ghosts. Now, I don't know if that means something real is out there, or if nearly half the world is just losing their minds. But think about it. Why couldn't there be other things out there? Things we don't understand. Things more powerful than us. Things that just don't fit into what we know. So with that said, I've got stories, creepy and scary, real accounts of ghosts and unexplained non-human entities from all across America. Some of these are specifically from Appalachia, which, if you don't know, is basically the most haunted region in the entire country. And trust me, this stuff is going to get interesting. Drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and if you have a story, send it here. We all want to hear it. Now, let's just get into today's video. I was young, probably around 4 or 5, I'm not sure. My mom was in jail at the time, so I was living with my aunt and uncle. It was an old house somewhere in Tennessee. I remember it had this really big grating on the floor. I think it was for heat, but it was right next to my room. Like I had to walk on it to get into my room. Like most little kids, I was scared of the dark, so I had my door open, and my aunt and uncle had turned on the bathroom light so I could sleep. To this day, I don't know what time it was. I just know that it was a full moon out, and I woke up for no reason that I could tell. Then, right outside my door, I was staring at a figure looking back at me. It was the size of a large human male. However, there were 3 things I noticed. 1, even though my window curtains were open and I could see the full moon, none of the moonlight was getting into the room, and that bathroom light was dark. 2, despite all this, the figure was even darker than that, swirling shadows like a mix between flame and smoke. I call it black, but I don't think that color does it justice. I just don't know how else to explain it. And 3, the eyes. The entire face was formless. No mouth, no nose, no ears that I could see, but the eyes were a dark blood red that somehow glowed bright like there was a light inside. I remember I felt absolutely no fear at the sight of this figure, and I don't remember how long we stared at each other. Then in my little kid mind, I'm not even sure what possessed me to even say this, but I've said in my questioning voice, "Mom?" Like the response was immediate. It simply cocked its head to the side like a dog, like it was as confused as I was. And then I watched it sink down into the grate until it was completely gone. Once it did that, slowly the light in the bathroom turned back on, and the moonlight flooded my room. I then remembered the next month or few. Honestly, it all blurred together. I would have these dreams that I felt within my entire body, that I was somehow too heavy and yet too light at the same time. It would always cause me to wake up sweating and shaking. Fast forward to when I was in my mid-20s. My mother and aunt are telling ghost stories that they experienced at an old farmhouse where they had lived when they were little girls. And one of my aunts starts to describe the exact same creature rising up into a sitting position in the top bunk of a bunk bed and staring at her. I never said anything about my experience, but simply listened, and she described the exact same creature that I saw that night. I've never seen it since, and to this day, I haven't felt fear when I think about it, but for as young as I was, that's one of the few memories that has stayed with me. I'm not someone who believes in ghost stories. I never was. Even as a kid, when my cousins would huddle around flashlights telling scary stories at sleepovers, I was the one rolling my eyes in the back. Ghosts weren't real. Haunted places weren't real. It was all just stories people told to feel something, to add a little excitement to their otherwise boring lives. I believed that right up until the summer I was 19. Right up until Dudleytown. There were 3 of us. Me, then there was Jake, who was 18, and then there was Danny. Danny was 17, the youngest of us, the quietest. It started the way most terrible decisions start, with a late night and a phone screen. We were at Jake's house, a Friday night in July, nothing to do. Half watching some random video on his laptop when Jake started scrolling through his phone like he always does when he gets bored. Jake, he had this list on his phone, actually, genuinely had a notes app list of abandoned and supposedly haunted places within driving distance that he wanted to visit someday. Old asylums, collapsed factories, forgotten cemeteries, that kind of thing. We already knocked a few off the list over the past year. An abandoned textile mill that was about 40 minutes from us turned out to be full of pigeons and broken glass and absolutely nothing scary. A supposedly haunted bridge that was just a bridge. We'd started to treat these little trips as more of a hobby than anything else, something to do on weekends when there was nothing else going on. We'd never actually experienced anything that we couldn't explain away. Dudley Town, Jake said, suddenly sitting up. What? I said. He turned his phone toward us. It was a Reddit post. Someone on r/abandoned talking about this old settlement deep in the forests of Cornwall, Connecticut. Founded in the 1700s, descendants of the Dudley family, completely abandoned and left to be swallowed by the forest. Ghost town in the middle of a Connecticut forest, Jake said. People say it's haunted, but people say that about everything. Looks cool though. Old foundations, ruins, the whole thing. Danny leaned over and looked at the pictures. That actually does look pretty cool. We read through the post. There wasn't much to it beyond the basic history. Old settlement, Dudley family, abandoned forest were claiming it. The comments had a few people saying it had a creepy atmosphere, but nothing specific. Nothing that made it sound like anything more than an interesting abandoned place with some local ghost story reputation attached to it. Which honestly was true of half the places on Jake's list. How far is it? I asked. Jake was already checking. 2 hours and change. We could do it in an afternoon, easy. We looked at each other. All right, I said. When do you want to go? Jake grinned. Tomorrow. We made no big plans, packed some water, snacks, flashlight, even though we intended to be back before dark. We left the next afternoon and drove up to Cornwall, Connecticut. The roads getting narrower and the trees getting thicker the closer we got. We turned onto the road running alongside dark entry forest just before 4 in the afternoon, parked off the road and started walking in. It's quiet, Danny said. Yeah, Jake said. For once he didn't have follow-up. We kept walking. The remains of the settlement emerged slowly from the underground. Stone foundations buried under moss and decades of fallen leaves. We picked our way through it for a while, taking pictures, stepping over foundation walls, doing what we always did at those places. Jake was narrating things in a voice he puts on when he's pretending to be a documentary presenter, which usually made me and Danny laugh. We found the structure that was more intact than the others, enough walls standing that it still roughly resembled a house, and went inside. Afternoon light came through the gaps in what remained of the roof, falling in pale strips across the debris on the floor. We were picking our way across the ground floor when we heard it, from upstairs. A woman laughing. All three of us stopped moving at exactly the same time. I felt the hair on my arm stand up. We stood there in complete stillness. Jake and I looked at each other. Danny had gone completely still behind me. Someone's up there, he said quietly. We came into what had been a bedroom, 3 walls still standing. The 4th open to the gray sky and the trees beyond, and in the far corner, sitting with her knees pulled to her chest, was a woman. She was older, maybe 60 or so, gray hair loose around her face, rocking slightly. She lifted up when we came in. Are you okay? Danny asked. Do you need help? Are you lost? She looked at each of us slowly, one at a time. Then she spoke, and her voice was the most unsettling part of the whole thing, because it was completely calm. They're going to kill you, she said. You didn't mean to come here. I know that. But they're watching us right now. All of us. Her eyes moved to the open wall, to the trees outside, and she stared out there for a moment before looking back at us. You need to leave before dark. You need to leave right now, before dark. None of us said anything. Who's watching us? Jake asked. She shook her head. It doesn't matter. Just go. We backed out of the room and came down the stairs and stood outside, and nobody spoke for a long moment. I looked at the trees, and for the first time since we'd arrived, I thought about the fact that if anything was standing in them, looking out, we would not be able to see it. She needs help, Danny said eventually. She may be lost or sick. I don't know. We should call someone. There was a gas station like 2 miles back, I said. We'd probably get signal there. Yeah, okay, Jake said, and he said it quickly. Let's go call and get someone out here for her. We turned to go and looked back, expecting Danny right behind me. He wasn't moving. Danny, I'm not going, he said. We came here to explore, and I'm not leaving because some woman in the woods said something weird. You guys make the call. I'll be fine here. Danny, you can't stay here alone. I'll stay on the main path. You'll be back in 20 minutes. I'll be fine. Jake argued. I argued. Danny stood there and listened to all of it with the patient expression of someone who had already decided and is just waiting for everyone else to finish talking. Stay where we can find you, I told him. Don't get into anything. Don't wander. Just stay visible. I'll be fine, Ryan. I looked at him for a second. Then I turned to follow Jake back toward the road. I told myself he'd be fine the whole drive to the gas station. We made a call. Officer Haynes answered. He was local, I could tell from his voice, and when I mentioned Dudleytown, something in his tone shifted. I told him everything. The woman, what she'd said, the way she'd stared at the trees. He listened without interrupting. That woman may be someone known to us in the area, he said carefully. She has a history of wandering, mental health situation. You said she was in one of the structures inside the settlement? Yes, sir. Upstairs in one of the houses. All right. You said 3 of you went in today. Where's the other one? Jake answered before I could think of a gentler way to say it. One of them stayed in the town. The silence lasted 2 full seconds. Do not move from where you are. I am on my way, right now. He was there in 4 minutes. Got out of the car, looked at both of us, and the look on his face was somewhere between worried and genuinely angry. You boys understand that's private property. Nobody's supposed to be in there. Yes, sir. We know. We're sorry. We'll discuss that later. Right now, your friend is alone in there. He was already moving. Get in the car. We drove back, went in on foot, with Haynes leading. The afternoon light going soft and golden in a way that would have been beautiful anywhere else. We went to the house first. The woman was gone. Not a trace of her except a slight impression in the dust in the corner where she'd been sitting. Then we looked for Danny. We called his name. The sound died in that forest like it was being swallowed. We moved through the ruins methodically, checking every foundation, every standing structure, every collapsed wall. 15 minutes of searching. Then we found the ruin at the far edge of the settlement. A collapsed structure, stones scattered and half buried in the earth. Barely recognizable as having ever been a building. We almost walked past it. Danny was behind it. He was on his back, in the undergrowth, arms folded across his chest like he placed them there himself. Completely still. His face was white, the color of something that the blood had left entirely. Haynes was down next to him in a second, checking his pulse, calling for an ambulance. I stood there, looking at my friend lying in the dirt of that forest, and felt something cold move through me that had nothing to do with the temperature. The doctor said it was an extreme shock response. His nervous system had been overwhelmed by something, and it shut down the way a computer does when it overheats. A protective mechanism. No physical injuries. No sign of a fall or struggle. His body had simply stopped. He woke up 4 hours later. I was sitting in the chair by his bed when his eyes opened. For a moment, he just stared at the ceiling, and I exhaled and thought we were through it. Then his eyes moved to the window. Something in his face changed completely. It was at the tree line, he whispered. It was standing there. It's going to kill me. He started crying. He kept saying it over and over, his hands gripping the bed rails until his knuckles went white. His eyes locked on the window like something was on the other side of it. The tree line. It's going to kill me. The tree line. It's going to kill me. The nurse had asked us to step outside. We got him home 2 days later. His parents sat across from us with faces I never want to see on anyone again while we explained what we could, which wasn't much. The doctors had no diagnosis beyond acute psychological trauma. Recommended ongoing care, possible long-term support needed. His mom held Danny's hand and didn't say a word the entire time we were talking. Jake and I walked home separately that night. I sat at my desk, and I don't know exactly why I did it. Maybe needing to understand, needing some kind of framework, needing anything that would make sense of what I'd seen. But I started researching Dudleytown properly. Not the casual scroll we'd done before deciding to go. Really searching, reading everything I could find. And I found the story of Dr. William Clark, a New York physician from the early 1900s who had discovered the Dudleytown area, fallen in love with the forest, bought over 1,000 acres and built a cabin there with his own hands. He and his wife visit regularly for years. And then one visit, Clark was called back to New York urgently on business. He told his wife he'd only be gone a couple of days. He left her alone at the cabin. He came back 36 hours later. His wife was in the cabin, laughing at things that weren't there, pointing at things none of them could see, completely unreachable. She was saying things that didn't make sense, repeating things over and over. Clark, a medical doctor, a man who had dedicated his life to rational explanation, had no explanation for what was happening to his wife in those 36 hours alone in the forest. She never recovered. I read it once, then I read it again. Then I sat back in my chair and stared at the wall and thought about Danny in that hospital bed, his face white, his hands on the rails. The tree line, it's going to kill me. The tree line, it's going to kill me. I thought about a woman in a cabin in those same woods 100 years ago, repeating things over and over, pointing at things no one else could see, never getting better. I closed the laptop and went to bed. The fever started that night. It lasted 2 days, and during those 2 days I dreamed about dark trees and something standing just beyond the reach of any light, completely still, watching with a patience that had nothing human in it. That was 4 months ago. Janie is still in care. His mom calls sometimes with updates. His mom told me last week that the doctors are helpful. I don't know what to say to that, so I just said I hoped so too. I think about Dr. Clark's wife sometimes. I think about how she was completely fine, a normal woman, and then 36 hours alone in those woods and she was never fine again. I think about how Clark must have felt, coming back to find her like that, knowing that whatever had happened in his absence was something he would never be able to fix or explain or understand. We should have left. We should have taken Danny with us and left and never looked back. Instead, we left him alone in those woods, and something found him there and took whatever it took, and left behind this quiet, broken version of our friend who stares at windows and whispers about the tree line. My parents had been invited to a birthday party from one of my father's old college friends, a 50th, held at a venue about an hour and a half outside the city. They planned to stay the night at a nearby hotel rather than make the drive back late, which meant I had the apartment to myself from Saturday afternoon until Sunday morning. My older sister was away at college. It was just me. My mother went through her checklist before they left. Leftovers in the fridge, the front door locked and confirmed. My father told me not to stay up too late. They pulled out of the parking lot just after 4 in the afternoon, and I spent the next several hours doing exactly what I wanted. Eating when I felt like it, watching TV, sitting on the balcony off the living room for a while as the sky got dark. Just a quiet Saturday evening, alone in an apartment I had lived in for 2 years. I fell asleep around 11. The television was still running low. The balcony door was open a few inches because the apartment had felt warm earlier and I'd never gotten around to closing it properly. I was asleep within minutes of lying down. Then suddenly, I woke up just before 2 in the morning. There was no immediate reason. I was just feeling uneasy and a little dehydrated. I reached for my phone, checked the time. I was about to set it back down when I heard something from the hallway. It was brief and low, a sound that sat right at the edge of being identifiable. I lay still and listened. After a minute passed, I put the phone down and closed my eyes, ignoring and thinking it's maybe the wind. Then I heard it again. Same hallway, same low, ambiguous sound. I sat up. I told myself what anyone tells themselves at that moment. Old buildings make noise. The neighbors above had a habit of moving around at odd hours. All of that was true, and none of it stopped me from sitting completely still. So I got up and checked the hallway. It was empty. I opened every door and looked in every corner and found absolutely nothing. And by the time I had finished, I felt the particular embarrassment of someone who had just frightened themselves over the sound of their own building. I drank a glass of water, left the kitchen light on, and went back to bed. I was almost asleep when the feeling arrived. It is difficult to describe with any precision. Not a sound this time. It was a sudden and complete certainty that the air in the room had changed. That the darkness on the other side of the bedroom door was different from the darkness it had been 60 seconds ago. I lay completely still, and I felt it the way you feel someone standing behind you before you turn around. A presence. Dense and close and absolutely certain. The bedroom door was still halfway open. The hallway beyond it was dark. I stared at that strip of darkness until my eyes ached and I saw nothing. No shape, no movement, nothing at all. The apartment was silent. And yet the feeling did not leave. It sat in the room with me, and it did not shift or diminish. And the longer I lay there, the heavier it became. I reached for my phone to turn on the flashlight and knocked it off the nightstand. It hit the floor and skidded toward the doorway. I watched it come to a rest just at the threshold, screen facing down, the room going darker for the loss of even that small standby glow. I stared at it. I would have to get up and cross the room to retrieve it, and the doorway was right there. And beyond the doorway was the hallway, and whatever was or wasn't in it. I sat on the edge of the bed for what felt like a long time before I moved. I crossed the room fast, crouched for my phone, and as my hand closed around it, I heard a sound directly behind me. Not from the hallway, from inside the room. Close enough that every nerve in my body fired at once, and I was moving before I had made any conscious decision to move, straight to the doorway, into the hallway, toward the living room. I don't have a clear memory of crossing the living room. I remember the balcony door in front of me and my hands going to the handle and the door sliding open and the cold night air hitting me all at once. I remember stepping out and my foot finding the edge of the balcony floor and my heart was racing too fast. I thought I had a heart attack. Then out of nowhere, my head spins so hard I went over the railing before I could do anything about it. One floor down, the courtyard pavement came up fast and I landed on my left side. My ankle folding completely wrong underneath me, my shoulder taking the impact of the rest. I lay there on cold concrete and I could not get up, and I could not stop shaking. After a moment, I started shouting because it was the only thing I could think to do. A light came on in the ground floor unit facing the courtyard, then another. A woman from the building came out first, crouching down next to me, asking me something I couldn't properly process. More lights came on. Someone called for an ambulance. I lay there on the pavement looking up at the second floor balcony I'd just come over the railing of, and I remember thinking how close it looked from down there, how unremarkable the distance seemed from the outside. The paramedics arrived within minutes. They stabilized my ankle, checked my shoulder, asked me a series of questions I answered poorly. Someone had already reached my parents by the time I was being loaded into the ambulance. I don't know who made that call, a neighbor or building management or somebody else entirely. I just remember being in the back of the ambulance and the feeling of motion. My parents met me at the hospital. My mother came through the curtain of the emergency bay with a look on her face that I have never been able to describe accurately and hope not to see again. My father stood behind her, very still, saying nothing at first. The doctor who examined me was calm and efficient. Fractured left ankle in 2 places, badly bruised shoulder, nothing requiring surgery, nothing that time and rest wouldn't resolve. She told me I was lucky with a directness that made it clear she meant it literally, and sent me home 2 days later with a set of crutches and instructions for the next several weeks. I spent those first days back in the apartment, mostly on the couch, my ankle elevated, moving as little as possible. My father was quieter than usual, which for him was saying something. On the 3rd day, when things had settled into a kind of routine and my parents had begun to relax slightly, I asked my father what I had been turning over since the hospital. I asked him whether anyone had found out what was in the apartment that night. He was sitting in the armchair across from the couch, reading something, and he looked up without any particular change in his expression. He set the thing he was reading down and told me that he had spoken to the police after we came home from the hospital. He said they had found a thief operating in the neighborhood, someone who had been moving through buildings in the area, letting himself into units through unlocked doors and open balconies. He said the timing lined up. He said it was probably the same person. He said they had it handled. I didn't say anything. I nodded and looked back at the television and let it go. But I have thought about that conversation many times since then, and I never have quite been able to accept it at face value. A thief is something you can understand. A thief has motive and a method and belongs to a category of thing the world already has a name for. A thief operating in this neighborhood is a clean explanation. It accounts for the unlocked balcony door. It wraps the whole night into something containable and set it aside. I understand why he offered it. I think he meant it kindly. I don't believe it was a thief. It was something else. In my younger 20s, a few years back, I worked briefly at a small dialysis clinic. I live on a Native American Indian reservation in the United States. The reservation itself is rather large, but full of small towns that are quite spaced apart. The area here is rife with paranormal activity due to a lot of tragedy, generational trauma, and there's a lot of crime that goes on. The dialysis unit was brand new, but I suppose the spirits there aren't. I was still new working there, so I wasn't quite familiar with the hauntings other than hearing about it from other employees. It was about late afternoon. A fellow nurse and I were taking a patient off the machine. The patient was sitting in one of the corner chairs a little bit away from everyone else. The patient was legally blind, but she could still see as much as shadows and light occasionally. She had asked the nurse and I who was behind us. They kept walking back and forth. The nurse paused and looked behind us, confused. She told the patient that it was just her and I over there by her. She told the patient that there was a trash can behind us, but told her that there wasn't anyone over in that corner other than the 3 of us. The patient had insisted that someone was behind us, but eventually shrugged it off. This, of course, was the first incident, so I didn't put much thought into it. About 2 months into working there, I experienced a stranger incident. After getting all the patients hooked up to the machines, everything started to calm down a bit. I was heading to the nurse's station to sit down when a patient called me over to her. This lady had been coming to dialysis for a few years, so she was very familiar with all the staff. She asked me who our new worker was. I told the patient that we didn't get any new workers recently, and that we didn't have anyone new visiting or helping that day. She looked at me very confused and told me that she had seen a new woman going around the unit with us. The lady told me that was her first time seeing this woman and that she had scrubs on with a gown like the rest of the staff, so she assumed we had a new worker. After that day, the patient told me she never saw the woman ever again and would talk about it once in a while, discussing how odd the occurrence was. And before all of that, we had an elderly male patient who would see a nurse around and everyone just kind of blew him off. Another coworker of mine at that time had seen the woman before as well. Despite the weird happenings and experiences there, I think the woman meant well and was just looking after the patients from the afterlife. Dialysis is a stressful, high-paced environment where anything can go wrong at any given moment. After asking around, there had not been any previous nurses who worked there that died. I will never know who this nurse is or where she came from. Perhaps an angel in disguise, still performing her nursing duties from the other side. I know there were quite a few entities in the building, but she never brought a scary vibe or a heavy feeling.